What's up guys, I'm Phoenix Master 1 and welcome to my unit review and builds guide for the Jehanna banner featuring Desert Ike, Tethys, Marisa, and Malice. I'll also be going over their fodder and how you can best use it. So let us begin with Jehanna Ike, who is a Lance Infantry unit this time. He has got Swirling Lance, which has got the -1 special cooldown, and at sort of both player phase and enemy phase, if he's within 2 spaces of an ally, then he gives himself and the allies in 2 spaces the +6 defense and speed buff, the null panic status, which does help a lot as we do see Loyality just spreading the panic status, and also the new half frozen effect. So this is basically going to be increasing the speed difference for the foe to make a follow-up attack by 10 speed points. And this does help a lot of the higher speed units like Ike himself because it makes it harder for the enemy to double him, and that can translate into more bulk and longevity as you will get doubled less often. And if he's in 3 spaces of an ally, then in the combat he can get up to +14 to all of his stats, depending on number of allies in 3 spaces times 3 added with 5. So it is pretty easy to get, and he also gets true damage and flat damage reduction based on 20% of his speed. None of this is going to be getting added into the AoE specials, so this kind of flat damage reduction is going to be helpful for tanking, and he also has the 50% damage reduction piercing, so he doesn't really need any kind of other skills to give him the piercing, as Laguz Loyalty doesn't really give that to him. And he also comes with a new slotsy skill in Time Pulse Edge. This is just an upgrade of Time Pulse 4, as it not only has the Time Pulse 4 effect built in it, but it also gives you attack and speed in the combat, depending on your max cooldown value +2. So Ike is going to be getting +5 to his attack and speed, and usually you want to have like 3 cooldown special with this kind of skill, but still this is going to be the skill you should be having over Time Pulse 4, especially in stuff like Hollow Forms, because even if you're running a low cooldown special, still you're going to be getting some extra stats in the combat, so it is going to be a bit better. Ike does come with a preferred special in Aether's Path, so this is a 4 cooldown special which becomes a 3 cooldown special with his weapon, and then Time Pulse Edge brings it down to 2 cooldown, and with Laguz Loyalty he's going to be having an easier time triggering it. So when it triggers, it is going to be boosting his damage by 75% of foes' greater speed or defense, and it also heals up 50% of his max HP. So unlike Aether, this doesn't heal you up based on the damage that you have done, but instead takes his max HP. So if you've got higher HP with the mythic buffs or legendary buffs, then he's going to be able to heal more HP, which can help him survive. And in the combat, the special gives him a lot of the effects. So he has the Null Guard effect. He also has the Deep Wounds effect, which does help him against the Fatal Smoke enemies. And he also gets Null Counter Disrupt, which is extremely useful effect nowadays because Loyalty does inflict the flash status, and having this is going to be helping you as a tank. And he cannot run Null Sea Echo like Attuned Sita or Attuned Temera, so having it built in a special is really helpful. And then he has got Unpierceable damage reduction based on his current special cooldown value times 10 subtracted from 50. So it is going to be 30% at the bare minimum, and it is going to be 50% if the special is triggered in the combat. So this, along with the flat damage reduction of his weapon, is going to be helping him a lot in tanking because his raw stats are not all that high for a tank. Even his defense, he's mainly going to be having more speed than a lot of the units with base 47, and that also has a super boon. So that is his best boon, and HP is going to be the boon that he could ascend because his special does heal him up based on his max HP, so having more HP helps with that and also helps you be a bit more bulky. He also comes with a new Laguz skill in Laguz Loyalty, so this is going to be the skill for the infantry units that specialize in the speed stats. So in the combat, this debuffs your opponent for -4 attack and speed, and if you have an offensive special, then it must be 3 cooldown or more, and it doesn't have any kind of requirement for a defensive special. So any kind of defensive special can work with it, but the offensive specials need to be 3 or more cooldown, just like Laguz Friend. And it also pierces your own pierceable damage reduction from stuff like Dodge or Dragon Wall by 50%, and then gives you the flat damage reduction in exchange for it based on 20% of your speed. And this is not going to be helping you against the AoE specials, and it also has the -2 cooldown preempt pulse before foe's first attack. just like Laguz friend. So defensively, this is going to be helping you, and with any kind of defensive special, that is going to be making it easier for you to trigger it, as Scowl is not really going to be stopping it. And a part of this skill only works in the enemy phase when the foe initiates combat, so Ike is able to get the other half of the frozen effect, which reduces the speed difference for him to make a follow-up attack by 10. So this can help you double the enemy more, whereas the other half of the frozen effect from his weapon is going to be stopping the enemy's double. And then the skill also gives you 7 true damage, which is quite low compared to Laguz friend. So both of these skills are going to be competing against each other when it comes to the slot B skill of many of the units. And basically, if your unit does not have overly high defense or resistance, then you should be running Laguz Loyalty, because chances are they're probably going to be having more speed. So this way they're able to get more flat damage reduction, which can help them tank better. And Laguz friend is going to be there if you have more defense or resistance. And Laguz friend is going to be giving you more true damage, and also gives you the full damage reduction piercing on your special triggers, and has no damage reduction piercing. So you're going to be needing something like 50% damage reduction piercing in your weapon or from your attune skill like Tempo Echo. So it does need a bit of support, whereas Laguz friend is going to be giving you the full piercing straight up. And Laguz friend can also work in the player phase on your special triggers, but a part of Laguz Loyalty only works in the enemy phase when the foe initiates combat for the half frozen effect and the true damage. So that's a bit unfortunate, because a lot of these faster units are going to be having better player phase, so they would have liked to get those effects in the player phase as well. So overall, Laguz Loyalty is not all that insane of a skill. It is going to be a side grade for many units, and for some units, it is not really needed over Laguz friend. And Laguz Loyalty gives you flat damage reduction based on your speed, and a lot of times your speed is not debuffed to the degree of your defense and resistance against units like Ectanier or Attune Micaiah. So those kinds of units can reduce your flat damage reduction with Laguz friend, but usually, speed is not debuffed that much. So in that case, Laguz Loyalty can help, but still the piercing and the higher true damage does help immensely from Laguz friend. But if you don't have stats for it, then it is not going to be giving you a lot of flat damage reduction or true damage to begin with. So Laguz Loyalty is still going to be your option if you have better speed. One of the best users of Laguz Loyalty is Fallen Ike himself, because his Refine gives him the full damage reduction piercing, so Laguz friend overlaps a bit with that, and he doesn't have the highest defense in the world, so he can still get a good amount of flat damage reduction with Laguz Loyalty and with his Unity effect. And he can also run Time Pulse Edge and run Null Counter Disrupt Echo in his attune slot. And because he doesn't have a -1 special cooldown weapon, he can run Gust along with Laguz Loyalty, as it is going to be a 3 cooldown special for him. And a lot of free-to-play units like Fallen Lloyd also do not have a -1 special cooldown weapon, so you can just run Gust on them along with the slot B skill. And Attune Bridget's fodder is perfect for a lot of these units, because Laguz Loyalty lacks the damage reduction piercing, so you can get that out of Tempo Echo, and then you get the full null follow-up out of perfect attack speed, and then Time Pulse Edge can give you extra stats and also help you trigger Gust better. And it can also be run with many of the units that have damage reflection, and one of the best units for it is in this banner itself, in Desert Malice. So she has the Laguz style preempt pulse in her weapon, so she can instantly have Miracle be ready before foe's first attack, and that way she can just reduce a lot of damage with her flat damage reduction, and then reflect the damage back with her double, and just kill the opponents most of the time. So she can be a really powerful unit with this kind of flat damage reduction, and a lot of units that have this kind of damage reflection like Hans, Echidna, can also make use of it, because they also do not have the highest defense or resistance. And same goes for free-to-play units like Fallen Lloyd, who have these kinds of balanced mixed bulk. And this can also be run on Festival Lucia or even the regular version of her. So she doesn't really trigger any kind of specials in the combat, so the piercing of Laguz friend doesn't really help, and she can still get the damage reduction out of Gust as long as it's pre-charged. So now she can get the piercing out of Tempo Echo, and then she can just run Endless Tempest to have the double effect and be a really annoying anti-meta unit. And Summer Fiorm is also one of those units with the mixed bulk where she doesn't have the highest defense or resistance, so she does prefer this over Laguz Friend, and perfect attack speed can also give her the full null follow-up. And like I said, defensive specials do not have any kind of special cooldown requirement, so her special can work, but she is going to be missing out on the piercing. But nowadays you can also outsource it with the damage reduction piercing status, which many of the units have, like Halloween Asker for example. And Brave Male Robin is going to be getting a refine in this year, and he's one of the premium units who doesn't have a -1 special cooldown weapon, so he can run Gust with it. And because of his warping, he can easily try and make use of the Excel skill and stack up the flat damage reduction. And he does have the full damage reduction piercing with his weapon as long as he has got a 3 cooldown or higher special. So this game plan does work for him. And you can also run this with a lot of the arcane weapons, but keep in mind that the arcane weapons are going to be having -1 special cooldown, so you should not be running Gust with it. You're going to be forced to use Godlike Reflexes if you use Loyalty with these kinds of builds. And you can also try and use this with Jehanna Lance Plus that we have recently got. So like I said, this is amazing with any kind of damage reflection. And Jehanna Lance, unlike the arcane weapons, doesn't have -1 special cooldown, so you get to run Gust and have better damage output. And many of the modern arcane weapons nowadays, like Giant Axe, do have the flat damage reduction and true damage built in them, so you could try and stack that up with Laguz Loyalty. They unfortunately lack the null follow-up, so you can try and get null follow-up out of their Slotsy skill with Infantry null follow-up or with Oddspeed Wave 4. Coming back to Jehanna Ike, he is an amazing Omni tank who's going to be at the level of Attuned Chimera, but he is not really going to be better than her in my opinion. He's going to be a side grade at best, and in many situations, Attuned Chimera is going to be a bit better because her Sandstorm's damage is insane, and she also has the Bulwark effect in her weapon, so that can really help you many times so that your backline units do not get sniped. Ike doesn't really have the Bulwark effect, and he doesn't have the scope to run it either because he needs to run Laguz Loyalty, and you're most likely going to be wanting to give him the Bulwark status from someone like Attuned Hector, who can also help him with the stone tiles so that he can tank the AoE specials a bit better. So he is a really solid Omni tank, but if you were expecting the second coming of Emblem Ike, then unfortunately Jehanna Ike is simply not that. Jehanna Ike's default kit is going to be working out fine, and he himself is his best emblem. So you can try and run Emblem Ike Ring for more unpierceable damage reduction, and all of the things in his base kit are really essential for him, except for his Slotty skill I guess in many situations. So you could try and run the Squad Sacred Seal so that he can have more HP, so that he can heal more HP out of his special, and you could also try and replace his Slotty skill with perfect attack speed because you need the null follow-up effect on him. Even though you have got the frozen effect, still that doesn't make you immune to the guaranteed follow-up attacks, so you still need to have the full null follow-up out of it, and he's mostly going to be near his allies, so the condition of the perfect skill does work out for him. And you could just run Distant Counter Melee Sacred Seal instead, and if you're just going to be using him for the melee tanking, then Squad A Sacred Seals are still useful. Jehanna Tethys is a colorless dagger flyer, and she's the 4-star focus of this banner. So if you're trying to plus a merger, then it is going to be a bit easier. And she comes with Jehanna Dagger Plus as the inedible weapon, and this is the exact same weapon as Desert Saber, but as a dagger. So it does have Phantom Speed +7 built in, which is going to be helping you with the speed check of dodge and the other speed checking skills. And at start of both phases, if you're in 2 spaces of an ally, then you give yourself and the allies in 2 spaces the +6 attack and speed buff, which is pretty nice for the supportive aspect, and you also give them the dodge status and the null debuff status. So dodge does have good synergy with its phantom speed, and it's not the worst thing because it does have the AoE damage reduction, but the null debuff status is really helpful along with the visible buff, and it does have good synergy with any kind of unit that does have a bonus doubler type of skill. And if you're in 3 spaces of an ally, then you're able to get +5 to all of your stats, and it has got 7 flat damage reduction on foes first attacks, including the brave hits, and the full damage reflection. And this damage reflection is the full scope one, like Echidna or Hans's weapon, and this is not the limited scope one like Calic or Petrine's Refine. So this is absolutely insane, and this along with the Emblem Lin Ring is going to be amazing for so many of the Dagger units, and it just gives Arcane Sly Knife a run for its money when it comes to a weapon, which is amazing for an inhittable weapon. And even though Dagger units are not going to be as bulky as the Lance units, still you could try and take advantage of Sethith or Ronin and their flat damage reduction support, and because you're going to be using Lin Ring, you can stay near your allies and get the flat damage reduction and take advantage of this damage reflection and do a ton of damage to the enemy. So this is a really good weapon, and a lot of Dagger units are going to be liking it, and this is also a fantastic support weapon for any kind of Dancer because you give the visible buffs to your allies and the status effects. So if you got the Pharma Lara from the Holo Forms, you could simply give her this kind of weapon and you're able to support a bit better. And this is gonna be the best weapon for air because if you have her as part of your Mythic core, then now she can not only function a lot better with Lookout Force and with Potent Disarm, but she also gives more status effects with Jehanna Dagger, and she also has access to Soaring Echo, so she is a fantastic utility unit, and I'm so happy that she has gotten so many upgrades in a short amount of time. And Potent Disarm is going to be helping you be immune to the Hex Traps, and it is going to be bringing down the trigger condition of it by 10 HP, so you need to have at least 56 or more HP to be immune to all kinds of traps. So that's why Firestorm boost and the HP boon is going to be helpful to her, so that you have the flexibility of running aerobatics in your Sacred Seal, and then you can just warp around your team and reposition them or just smite them. Infantry Dancers can also run Infantry Null Follower 4 in this Lotsie, but you could also try and take advantage of the fodder of Attuned Azura and run the Cantrip scale for the debuff. You also get Mercy Wing Echo, and Flash Barrow is going to be having good synergy with the Jehanna Dagger for triggering lethality, along with the Tempo Sacred Seal. And even though you're not running Arcane Sly Knife, Lookout Force is just insane as a Slotsy skill for so many of these Dagger units. So like I said in my Sly Knife tier list, the Slotsy skill of Rearm Layla might be a lot more valuable than her Dagger, and it is proving to be the case with this kind of weapon. And you can also run this on many of the Flying Dancers. They can also run the Lookout Force and Cantrip combo, but they also have access to Soaring Echo. And ideally your Dancer should not be engaging in too much combat, but if they do, then the damage reduction from Remote Sparrow could be helpful in that. Flyers don't really have too many options, and you could also run this on many of the Dagger armors. There are not too many of them, and one of the better ones is going to be Winter Jafar, who has access to Clever Fighter, and he is fast. So the Phantom Speed of Jehanna Dagger does help you with the speed check of Clever Fighter, and it also gives you the flat damage reduction, and hopefully we can get the speed version of the Briar skill. And speaking of Briar skill, it also has the reflection, and with Wily Fighter 4 and its flat damage reduction, you could have this kind of build on a bulky Dagger armor. So I'm inclined to say that this is the better weapon for these Dagger armors than Arcane Sly Knife, because it also has the 7 flat damage reduction, but it also has the reflection, which is so powerful with the flat damage reduction armor skills that they can try and run. And the downside is that this doesn't have -1 special cooldown, so you will need to provide them with some kind of special charge support or the pulse support. And you could also run this on many of the units that have not that high of an attack stat, and Felicia definitely qualifies for that. So she has got really high resistance, which you can make use of with Laguz Friend 4 and Pulse Ploy, and she can basically try and hit really hard with Glacies and with the full damage reduction piercing of Laguz Friend, and make the full use out of the damage reflection of Jehanna Dagger. So with this weapon, you want to stack up the flat damage reduction, so having higher defense or resistance does help. Summer Clan can also run a similar build, and he has much higher attack, but if you're a Felicia fan, then this is certainly the better weapon compared to Arcane Sly Knife in my opinion. And this could also be run on many of the fast Dagger units with Speed Taker. Speed Taker does have the Null Guard, and it also gives you the true damage. So with Flash Barrow, you can easily try and trigger lethality on your double with the Emblem Lin Ring. and also with the special charges of it. And Fleeting Echo is the attune skill that comes with Flash Barrow with Attune Nino, so it does help a little bit with the reflection of this weapon, but ideally any kind of Laguz skill is going to be helpful, and if your Dagger unit doesn't have the highest defense or resistance, then Laguz Loyalty is going to be their pick, and you could try and get the full null follow-up with perfect attack speed. And with the Laguz Loyalty special jump, you can easily trigger Lethality, and you can also run Tempo Echo as it comes with perfect attack speed, and Lookout Force is simply going to be better for any of these daggers if they are not running Pulse of Ploy. Another low attack but higher defense resistance unit is going to be Matthew. So Jehanna Dagger can give him the attack and speed buff, and then you could run Defense Res Pledge to get the full buffs, make use of it with C bonus doubler, and basically use Ignis to do a lot of damage with Laguz Friend 4 and get the full piercing. So he is the defense variant of the Felicia build, I suppose. And you could also run this on many of the Dagger Cavaliers, but they do not have access to too many skills, and full disarm is going to be their main way of getting the Null Guard effect, which is really important with Jehanna Dagger because it doesn't have the -1 special cooldown or the special jumps of Sly Knife. So triggering Lethality is going to be a bit of a challenge, and they do not have access to Tempo Echo for the piercing or physical null follow-up or speed defense Tempo 4. So you pretty much need to trigger that, and Slice Sparrow does work out with this weapon because you do get the 2 status effects. So the condition of the Slice scale is always going to be active, and the guaranteed follow-up attack out of these Slice scales does help you act as a pseudo half null follow-up, so it can just help you double. And Lookout Force is going to be the permanent slot in for a Flyer or Cavalier, and you could also run this on Flyers, but they do have a bit more options. At least they have Speed Taker, so you could get the Null Guard out of it, and you also get the true damage out of it, so it can help you nuke better, and you can run Soaring Echo. Coming back to Tethys, she also has good fodder with Firestorm Dance 3, which can give you the Desperation on your target ally. And I think this skill is a lot better now because of the Emblem Lin Ring, because you can try and run Bridal Catria or Winter Cordelia, just any kind of triangle attack or dual strike, and be near your allies and then get the Desperation effect from your Dancer, and then just have the quad attacks, and if the enemy doesn't have Hardy Bearing, then they pretty much get destroyed. And it also gives the Canto 1 to the Dancer, but unfortunately this completely overlaps with Jehanna Dagger with its attack and speed buff, so I wish this buffed up defense or resistance. And when it comes to her stats, she has got 42 resistance with a super boon, so she can easily make use of the ploy skills and the discord skills and anything that is going to be having the resistance check. And her speed is also pretty high, but unfortunately her attack is pretty much going to be meaning that she should not be engaging in any kind of combat, and she's mainly there to dance the allies. For an absolute budget build, you could try and run Fury 3 as her slot A because Jehanna Dagger doesn't have any kind of HP threshold, so you don't really mind the chip damage, and you can just run defense and resistance tactic so that you can fully buff up an ally. And with the fodder of Divine Codes, you could at least try and upgrade her slot A to Attack Speed Catch or Remote Sparrow, and Soaring Guidance could be run in the slot C if you're not really going to be foddering Attuned Ivy and her Soaring Echo to her. So this way she can have some kind of warping support for her allies. And Aerobatics is always really good on any kind of flying dancer because it lets you warp with your dancer and then dance up an ally and then retreat with the Canto of the Firestorm Dance. And to not have any kind of overlap with Jehanna Dagger, you could try and run Attack Defense Cantrip and Mercy Wing Echo from Attuned Azura, and you could also run a Ploy skill to make use of resistance. I do think that Jehanna Dagger Plus is pretty much her best weapon. I don't think she has any business running Arcane Sly Knife, but still, Lookout Force is a good skill that you could try and run on her because of its sheer utility and the distance swap and the Canto 2 that she gets out of it. So she can still get the Canto without running the Emblem Sigurd Ring or Fortress Echo or any kind of Firestorm Dance, and she could just run the Cantrip skill. And Remote Sparrow, like I said, is a viable option with the reflection of this weapon. But if you really want to optimize her with the debuffs, then Speed Resistance Ploy from Ninja Celine is going to be perfectly helping you get all of the debuffs on the enemy and also provide the visible buffs and the support with the Jehanna Dagger and also provide the warping. It's just that you will need to depend on Emblem Sigurd Ring to get the Canto. You could even run Fortress Echo if you want to, but I think I value the warping of Soaring Echo a lot more. And finally, if you're going to be using her in Aether Raids offense as a supportive dancer, then you could try and run her with Potent Disarm or really any kind of disarm trap skill so that you can dance on the traps and just nullify them, and then use Lookout Force so that your allies can go into the enemy line, and then you can also enable the warping of the other allies with the Soaring Echo. And keep in mind, with the trap skills, you at least need to have 66 HP after the mythic buff so that you can be immune to any kind of traps. So at this kind of investment with Firestorm boost and the Squad Seal, with the mythic buffs, she's easily going to be able to reach 70 HP and be immune to any kind of traps. Desert Marisa is going to be a star of this banner in many ways because of the support, and she is an Axe Cavalier with Laconic Axe as her preferred weapon. This has got -1 special cooldown, and it also has Canto 2 built in it. So you don't always need to run the Sigurd Ring, but still the extra movement out of it is still going to be nice. And you could also run the Emblem Celica Ring if you want to get the warping, as you already get the Canto out of this weapon. You also give +4 to all of the stats of your allies that are in 3 rows and 3 columns in the combat, and you also give the dual phase Brave effect to any kind of support partner or the ally with the highest max HP in 3 rows and 3 columns of her. And they are not going to be getting the dual phase Brave effect if they've got any kind of save skill and their savior triggers. Doesn't mean that you are not going to be getting the dual phase Brave effect against any kind of enemy save unit, but it just means that you cannot use your save units and get the Brave effects while trying to save. And you could still use your armor units, but as long as they are not saving anyone, you should still be getting the dual phase Brave effect. So many of the armor units like Newer Nidogre, Mythic Nidogre, Attuned Hector are bulky enough that they could still function as an Omni tank, so they could just be away from their allies and get the dual phase Brave effect and be extremely tanky and still take advantage of the support. And this kind of dual phase Brave effect is really helpful because you get this in the enemy phase. You're not able to get the triangle attack or dual strike in the enemy phase, and this opens up the Omni tank units to get the brave attacks and just kill their enemies. And you could even try and use the Vantage strategies and take advantage of this kind of dual phase Brave effect. So it can definitely lead to some interesting strategies in Summoner Duels and also in Aether Raids offense and even in Aether Raids defense. But in Aether Raids defense, it is going to be a bit harder as the highest HP unit is usually going to be your save unit many times. So trying to HP match your units does mean that if they all have the same HP, then they all get the dual phase Brave effect. So it is going to be a bit hard, but it is technically possible. And you could also try and use this Brave effect in the player phase with any kind of Emblem Lin Ring user. Of course, it's easier to use a dual strike or triangle attack support unit for that kind of player phase strategy, but still the flexibility of the range of her support can still be useful for any kind of Lin Ring user if they've got the same HP as maybe your Omni tank. So you could also make the use of the Brave effect at the same time, and then you could Omni tank the remaining units and still make use of the dual phase Brave effect. And Marisa herself gets the dual phase Brave effect if she's in that range. And in the combat, she's always going to be getting the effects in her player phase. And in the enemy phase, there needs to be an ally in 3 rows and 3 columns. And she's going to be getting +14 to all of her stats depending on the number of allies in that range, multiplied by 3 and then added by 5. And then she's also going to be able to get true damage based on 20% of her speed. And this does help in the nuking with this kind of Brave effect. She also gets flat damage reduction on the enemy's first attacks, including the Brave hits based on 20% of her speed. So she can actually try and survive a lot of hits with the Excel skill and get her quad attacks in with this kind of flat damage reduction. She also takes advantage of the Null Guard effect, which is a bit harder for the Cavaliers to get, and she gets the 7 HP healing after the combat. So Marisa's nuking herself is not all that insane, but what is really influential is the support that she brings to the table. And this might be the start of support units like her that provide the dual phase Brave effect in the combat. And like we got Winter Cordelia and then Ice Tribe Thea after Brattle Catria, so there may be more units. But right now she is in a really unique position with her nuking, but unfortunately she cannot really support too much because she is a Cavalier, so she doesn't have access to a lot of really good supportive skills. but she can still try and be useful in the combat. And for the combat, she brings a new skill for the Cavaliers and Flyers in Assault Force. So this is the tier 4 version of the Flow Force skill. You kind of lose the half null follow-up effect, but now this is going to be active in the enemy phase if you're in 2 spaces of an ally. And of course, it is always going to be active in your player phase. You can debuff the enemy for -4 speed and defense debuff, and you also get the null debuffs effect, so you're not going to be bothered by any kind of debuffs of the enemy. And you also get true damage based on 20% of your higher defense or speed. So this kind of dynamic true damage is really good because even units that do not have the speed can take advantage of the skill and still get some nice damage output out of this. And they also get 50% damage reduction piercing passively. So if they are not able to run no quarter that easily, or if they do not have the passive damage reduction piercing in their weapon, then this skill is going to be really good for them. And the main users of this skill are going to be a lot of the brave weapon users that are similar to Marisa. So Summer Male Shez comes to mind as he is a really popular free-to-play unit that a lot of people have built up, and he can take up all of the fodder of Marisa and function with it. And he already gets the true damage out of his weapon for his brave attacks, and he could just stack it up with Assault Force. And because he's a free-to-play unit, he doesn't really have the -1 special cooldown, so triggering no quarter was a bit troublesome, so now he could just get the piercing out of this. You could also run this on Lex, who recently got a weapon refine, and in my opinion, this is the best slot B skill for him because he could just commit with Ignis as a special and nuke really hard with Odd Defense Wave and its tempo effect. And he's also going to be getting the piercing, which he was lacking before, and he also gets the true damage, which is extremely helpful with his quad attacking. You can also run this on Har, who was in a weird spot because he didn't have enough speed for Wyvern Rift, and he didn't have the full access to reopenings, flat damage reduction, and true damage because of having this kind of brave weapon. So Assault Force could come in that position, give him the true damage at least, and you could try and stack it up with even attack wave N for some more true damage. You could also run this on Regan, who doesn't have the damage reduction piercing in her special triggers like Otter, and Assault Force can bring in more firepower. When we're talking about the brave attacks, of course, any kind of unit with triangle attack or dual strike is going to be able to use this, and Winter Cordelia does have these special charges in her weapon, so she could try and run a Gale Force build on a Lin Ring team and then try and clean up with her Gale Force, set up the Haste terrain with Deadly Miasma, and she also gets the guaranteed follow-up attack out of Slice the Sparrow, so it acts like a pseudo half-null follow-up. And Duels can also try and run this if you don't want to run Momentum as a slot B skill, so this way you're able to get some piercing and the extra firepower. And with his Refine, he has got a lot of the effects that you already want, and because he gets the guaranteed follow-up attack, again, you might not be able to get the full effect out of reopening, so this can also be helpful even if it doesn't provide you any kind of flat damage reduction. And you could just set up the stone terrain with the fortifications, and you don't really need Stronghold for getting the null debuffs or the cleansing essentially, which Assault Force kind of gives you in the combat. Coming back to Desert Marisa, because of being a harmonic unit, she does have her harmonic skill, which does apply on any kind of sacred stones or 3 houses or 3 hopes characters, and it is going to be giving them and herself the +1 movement. So a lot of good units that can take advantage of this extra movement, and she herself can get the extra movement, which is really helpful with the nuking, but it is only going to be for 1 turn, so you would have to use it depending on the situation in Summoner Duels. And if you want the permanent +1 movement, then Sigurd Ring or the support of someone like Jill is going to be helpful. And she also gives out the Resonance Blades and the unhindered movement status, so your Cavaliers are not going to be getting stopped by the Trench Tiles. And in sort of every 3rd turn, if this skill has been used, then it can be used again, which is helpful for Summoner Duels. So overall, Desert Marisa gives you one of the strongest effects in the game, which is the Brave effect in dual phase, and the range of her is quite flexible, so she opens up a lot of strategies, and you could just try and get the Brave hits on your units like Brave Felix, for example, and you could try and use a lot of your favorites with the dual phase Brave effect. Both of their super boons in attack and speed are going to be useful, and they're mainly going to be focusing on the offense. They don't really have a lot of business tanking things unless they're, just tanking in the player phase for quad attacking For that, they do have the flat damage reduction, and on a budget, you could just try and run the Celica ring because they do have the Canto too. So if you want to give the Sigurd ring to someone else on the team, you could try and do that, and attack speed clash is going to be helpful for the Sacred Seal. They do not need a lot of changes to work well, and both attack and speed super boon are going to be fine. Speed super boon is also nice, and you could also try and have them a bit more supportive with infantry speed tactic, giving the null follow-up effect to a lot of the Omni tanks that do not come with null follow-up in their kit, and even many of the player phase units like Emblem Lin do not have the full null follow-up in their kit, so this can be helpful offensively and even defensively. Brave Felix also doesn't have it, and because they are a Cavalier, you could try and give this to your infantry allies and just give them the extra attack with the drive attack. And you can of course use them with the Sigurd ring so that you could always have the +1 movement and have a brave attacking 4 movement Cavalier. Slice the Sparrow is also helpful on them because of their quad attacks, as you get the true damage on every single hit. And you could also run Fatal Smoke because the non-special miracle may stop them in their tracks, so this can be helpful nowadays as we have got a lot of miracles going around. Unfortunately, Cavaliers do not have a lot of attune skills, but Mercy Wing Echo can work on them if you really want to give them an attune skill. Assault Force is perfect because you can just not run no quarter and run a different special and function with that. And Assault Force also gives you the true damage, so it is also helpful for the damage output. Finally, if you want to give them something like Shadow Shift, then they could try and work with it, and that way they can try and position your team better, and it can be helpful in Aether Raids and also in Summoner Duels. And you could also try and extend the reach of your Lin Ring user by just putting them forward so that they can snipe using the Brave effect that Marisa is able to provide. Desert Malice is another sword infantry unit, but she is a sleeper good unit because of the damage reflection that she has got. So she has got the Swirling Scimitar as her preferred weapon. This has got the -1 special cooldown, unlike the Jehanna Dagger and Lance that we've got on this patch. And she also gets the Phantom Speed +7, so it does help with the triggering of Gust and the other skills that you could try and run on her. And she also gives herself and the allies in 2 spaces the +6 attack and speed buff, and also the dot status and the null debuff status, so it could help towards activating the distant counter effect out of the prime scale. And if she's within 3 spaces of an ally, then she's able to get +14 to all of her stats if she has got 1 or more Dragon Flower, and if she has no Dragon Flower, then at least she gets +10 to all of her stats, which is not bad. And she also gets the -2 special cooldown Preempt Pulse, the Laguz friend style, before the foe's first attack. So like I said, this is the Laguz style of Preempt Pulse, and this can help you instantly charge up something like Miracle with the Laguz skills. And you could also try and trigger Gust and Godlike Reflexes with this. And she also has the full damage reflection like the other Jehanna weapons, so this can help you just nuke really hard and delete things, because she also has the flat damage reduction on foes' first attacks depending on 25% of her speed. So this kind of flat damage reduction, along with any kind of other slot B skill that gives you more flat damage reduction, is extremely good, because the damage reflection is an effective way of taking down a lot of the tanks because they just do so much damage. And because she has got that kind of Preempt Pulse in her weapon, Miracle strats are something that she's able to uniquely use compared to a lot of the other units, which will be having a harder time and they may not have the damage reflection like her. She also has the 7 HP healing after the combat, which is just perfect with the Miracle strats that she could try and do. So overall, Desert Malice is a sleeper good unit because of the damage reflection and the Preempt Pulse built in her weapon, because this kind of Preempt Pulse stacks with the other Preempt Pulses that you could try and get out of Laguz Loyalty, for example. So she can have the Miracle and then reflect the damage, and this is the full damage reflection, so all of that damage reduction is going to be stackable with it. She does have high speed at base 48 with a super boon, and also base 44 attack, so she can nuke really hard with it. She's not exactly going to be the best Omni tank, but still she's quite unique with the things that she can pull off. She does come with Prime 4, which is a bit outdated at this point, but still it can work with the visible effects that she's able to get. And Spiked Wall does give her the true damage, and also the Null Guard and 7 flat damage reduction, so it can help. And Gust of course gives you the unpierceable damage reduction, which is also helpful with her game plan. So on a budget, you could try and give her the Infantry Nullfollow 4 from Divine Codes, because this is the perfect skill that can complete the full effects of the Prime skill and activate the distant counter effect all on her own. So along with her weapon, she can have 4 status effects and then take full advantage out of the Prime skill. And you could just run Emblem Ike Ring so that you could get some more unpierceable damage reduction. You could also run Emblem Sacred Ring if you want to, if you just want to have the +1 movement. And you could also run a finish skill. You could try and run her with the Excel skill to get more flat damage reduction, because she is going to be reflecting back that damage. So you could try and run Endless Tempest as well for the extra movement and the Dull All effect. And Gust could be run with the Emblem Celica Ring so that she can warp to the enemy. Unfortunately, she does miss out on the Null Follow-up effect with her kit, so you could run that as a secret seal, or you could just try and outsource to her with any kind of support unit. And you could also run her with the fodder of Attuned Sita, because she already gives herself the attack and speed buff with her weapon, so you could try and complete that with Defense Rest Pledge and take advantage of the Null Guard out of her Spiked Wall and try and make use of all of the buffs with Distant Bonus Doubler. And you can also run a Guard Echo that comes with the fodder of Attuned Sita, but I think she appreciates the fodder out of a different attuned unit, which is Attuned Bridget, so you can get perfect attack speed, which gives her the full null follow-up, which is, like I said, one of the things that she's missing in her kit. And you also get Tempo Echo, which gives her the full piercing. And she could also run Fatal Smoke 4 so that she can try and effectively delete the enemies and not let their non-special miracle get in the way. So that's also a useful slotsy skill, as we're getting a lot of the other effects with this kind of kit. But the best build for her is going to be using the Miracle. So Miracle can help you reflect back a lot of damage, and you've probably seen the Miracle and damage reflection shenanigans on many of the other units, but rarely any kind of unit does it so effectively like Malice, because she has got the Preempt Pulse in her weapon, and then she stacks that up with Laguz Loyalty, which also gives her the -2 Preempt Pulse before the foe's first attack. So all that stacks up, and you instantly charge your Miracle before the foe's first attack, and then you double them and reflect back all of the damage. So Laguz Loyalty is a really good skill for her, because she doesn't have the highest defense or resistance for Laguz Friend. So you could try and run this and get more flat damage reduction based on her speed. And this can also work with Godlike Reflexes if you want to. Do not run Gust with it, because it is going to be a 2 cooldown special. But Miracle is something that she can easily run and just cheese the enemy. And Breath of Life 4 could also be run in her slot C, because it can give her the healing so that she is in the range of the perfect skill and she is above that threshold. So that kind of healing does help with this Miracle playstyle and can make her annoying. And she also gives that support to the other allies. And you could also run Null Counter Disrupt Echo in her attune slot, because the flash status can also be a bit annoying to her with Larather and also the other sweep units, so this can stop them. There's also Distant Counter Echo that you could try and run if you want to free up your Secret Seal slot. But if you're just trying to use her with a Far Savior, then you could try and use her with other Secret Seals that can give her even more speed. You're not going to be able to stop her from charging up her Miracle, because this kind of defensive special does not get affected by Hush Spectrum or the Scowl effect. And again, guard doesn't really matter, because this is the special jumping. So she is going to be able to charge up her Miracle, but she's going to be having a bit of trouble against the AoE specials. So you need to watch out for that. And there's also effects like Legendary Nana or Spring Carla that can try and be used against her Miracle. But still, Legendary Nana hasn't gotten her Refine yet, and she doesn't pierce through the flat damage reduction yet. So you could still, try and use this effectively against a lot of the hard-hitting units. And she can even try and challenge some of the bulkier and really annoying units like Nidogar. And I want to thank all of my team members for their constant support, and you can click the link on the screen right now to check out my breakdown of Desert Saber and how you can use this weapon. And make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell, because YouTube sub boxes are about as functional as the damage reduction piercing you get out of Laguz Loyalty. So with that, I'll see you guys next time. Thank you so much for watching and have a great day.